I wanted to tell you just a little bit more about what we're doing now. So if you read some of the comments right at the end, I gave a thanks to an organization called Adventurers and Scientists for Conservation. So when we were down there, we actually partnered with this organization, and what their goal is there's a lot of scientists out there who, to be honest, some of the basic data collecting, it's not that hard to collect the data, but it's in very remote places, which means it's expensive and hard to get to. And then there's a lot of climbers, sailors, and other adventurers who are going to these pretty remote places and, in theory, could get the data for these scientists who need it. So this organization brings together those two people. So when we were there, we actually did both whale and penguin observations. The whale observations were part of a study that were gathering data to try to determine if this one gland in whales' heads actually is used for smelling. So when we saw whales, we basically say the direction the whales were swimming and the direction of the wind. The idea being that whales might swim into the wind in order to better smell their food because it lets off this strong odor. And then with the penguins, what we were doing was also observations. They've done a lot of studies on chickens where they put eye patches on their eye. This thing called lateralization, basically right-handed, left-handed, right-brained, left-brained, the idea that chickens, and they actually do use their eyes differently in terms of one's better for picking out seeds, another is better for fighting and having aggression. You can't really go around Antarctica putting patches on penguins' eyes. So one of the, ideas was, in a lot of the films you see the penguins kind of marching past each other in two rows to go to the sea through the snow, and so the scientists wanted us to video and photograph and count as much as possible if they were going kind of left eye, or right eye, kind of are they using an American driving system or a UK driving system. Now, of course, science never is perfect and it doesn't work out exactly as planned. The whale observations went quite well. The penguin observations less so. By the time we'd gotten there, a lot of the snow right near the sea had melted. A lot of the places we went to were flat, so the penguins kind of walked whichever way they wanted, and we did the best we could, but I wouldn't say it was the most spectacular observations ever known to science. So with my background being geology, Fede's being, captain of vessels, we kind of had this merging, and we really liked what we did for this organization, and we sort of had it in the back of our minds to maybe do something more in this realm. Well, an opportunity kind of landed in our laps this spring, or this summer. Should we turn off the front row of lights, or no? Yeah, yes, Bob, can we turn off just the front row of lights, just so we can see the photos? Thanks. So an opportunity landed in our laps, and there was a vessel for sale called Ocean Tramp down at the end of the world. And it's about double the size of Quixote. It's aluminum hulled, two-masted boat. And so the opportunity was there, and we grabbed it, and so now we're the proud owners of Ocean Tramp and Quixote. So kind of our next step is we want to now use both vessels to continue to do science. So to use this as a vessel, right now we're already in conversations with one woman who wants to use it to go do sample glaciers along the Beagle Channel, pending NSF funding. We're also working with some adventurers who might want to use it for climbing, and we also want to use it to go to cool places like Antarctica and the Beagle Channel and take people like yourselves or whoever down there to experience it as well. And when we go just as kind of a tourist boat, we are always going to reserve one berth for a scientist. And we are especially kind of aiming at whoever, but really like early career scientists, masters, PhD students. We'll give them a berth to go to wherever we are going. So that's kind of our mission in what we're doing next. So the really cool news is that Fede just got back from our very first scientific expedition 3 weeks ago on December 6th. And I'll tell you a little bit about that because it's pretty cool. So again, just some reference. Here's South America. And now I'm going to zoom in again down here in Tierra del Fuego, the southern tip. So here we are in Tierra del Fuego. Here's Ushuaia. This is the Beagle Channel, where Darwin actually spent a significant amount of time. And then here was their destination for these scientists. This is an island called Isla de los Estados, and the translation is Staten Island. But to be honest, in English that just sounds horrible because it conjures up images of New York City and busy streets, and this is the furthest thing you could get from the Staten Island that we know. So I'm just going to call it Isla de los Estados to keep it separate. So I'll zoom in again. Here you can see the island, and I'll also note too, actually, is that it's kind of close, but also far away. I mean, first of all, everything here is very remote and hard to get to. Basically, you've got Ushuaia and then essentially nothing else. Plus, there's some pretty crazy currents that run in through here, which can make it very tricky to navigate. So here's the island. You'll notice a lot of large fjords, all glacially carved. Here's the Google Earth version. This island is remote, and part of that is also told in its history. So, as we like to do in our history, we tried to put people in places maybe they shouldn't be. So we tried to colonize this, or the British did, with a prison. Unfortunately, the prisoners lasted about 1 or 2 years. Basically, you can't really grow food here. It's quite harsh. I mean, you get all of the weather that comes down. So that didn't last. And it was remote enough that Jules Verne wrote a book called Lighthouse at the End of the World, which definitely sounds very remote, and that's because it is. And that lighthouse is actually right out here. So this is the island and the lighthouse that he actually writes about. There were also a lot of shipwrecks that came onto this island. So why go to this island? Well, there's actually a research group in Ushuaia, the town we live, called the Center for Southern Scientific Investigations. And believe it or not, there's a group there that studies spiders. And they wanted to go to this island to look for new species of spiders. To be honest, myself being a geologist, you kind of know that going somewhere there's at least going to be rocks. You will find them. So I was a little bit worried for the success of this. I don't really know how the heck do you go around looking for new spider species. So I was a bit worried. But the good news is that they were incredibly successful. And not only did they find spiders, but they found a new species of spider. Wow. So here they are collecting some spiders. It's not even named yet, as far as I understand. But, you know, you might wonder, how the heck in 2014 are we still discovering new species of spiders? And the answer is it's still very remote and very hard to get to. And, you know, I showed you a little bit on the map, but let me even show you, it's even once you get there, it's challenging. So here's the island, and I zoom in on this bay here. And you can probably see this large bay, and it looks like a lake here, but actually there's a 7-meter, 21-foot passageway to get into this inner bay here. Now, it's 21 feet wide, so here's what it looks like on the ground. So that's 21 feet in there. The vessel's 18 feet wide. So that leaves you about this much leeway, and those are rocks, so you don't really want to run aground there. There can also be some funky currents coming in and out. So basically, you need to have a little bit of luck, a lot of confidence, a good captain, and good timing to get through there. And luckily, they had all of those, especially a good captain. And so there's the vessel going in. But of course, I mean, this is just one of numerous challenges. Again, as I said, it was a glaciated, you know, previously glaciated. So, you know, you can't just walk anywhere easily. There's no trails. Everything's very steep. So everywhere you want to go is quite challenging. So, I mean, this is why we're still discovering spiders in 2014. The other cool thing about doing science in these remote places is the unexpected science. So, in addition to the spider scientists, we also had a marine biologist, and her primary reason for coming on the trip was to look for marine mammal bones. That's what she specializes in. She was going to look at all the beaches and all of the fjords for any bones that had washed up. She unfortunately, again, science isn't always neat and tidy, she didn't find any, but what they did find was this colony of king penguins. So there used to be quite a thriving colony of king penguins on this island, and then kind of when the prisoners were there, and there is a small Navy station there of 5 people, they had been hunted and the eggs eaten, and so it pretty much dwindled. And last year, there were some scientists on the island, and they noted that there were 10 penguins and a few eggs. Now, if you count in this photo, the cool thing is there's 13 penguins and some more eggs. So this colony, hopefully, is on the up and up. So it was actually pretty rough to get ashore, but the Fede and the scientists got ashore on the boat. Everyone else stayed on board. They took some photos, took some notes, took some feather samples, and they'll be able to bring that back. So, going into the trip, this wasn't even on the agenda, but, they were able to come back with these observations and data. So, of course, you got to have some cool penguin photos, because they're pretty awesome photos. And I just want to conclude the evening with Laura's cool penguin facts, because they're cool and penguins are cool. So the first thing is not a misconception, but I want to talk about how penguins move kind of on land and on the water. So if you've watched National Geographic, Discovery, or even Happy Feet, they kind of land, they kind of waddle, or they do their stomach, toboggan thing. And then in the water, you always see them diving in and then just kind of going forever to find their food. You may have seen it in the video, the place where there was a lot of ice. There were all the penguins kind of jumping up and down. And they don't often show that, I think, in some of the documentaries. And that's called porpoising. And there's one of the guys up there, porpoising. That is actually, penguins need to breathe, so even though they dive down, and they do that, they can't stay down there forever. So the most efficient way for them to go from one place to another is to swim like that. Just like a dolphin, up and down, porpoising, breathing up, down, going like that. They also sometimes sit on the water like ducks, but that's just boring, so they never show that in the videos. So penguin fact 1 is this cool porpoising. I didn't really know that, and so I'm sharing that with you. The other thing is I want to talk about penguin feathers. And penguins, actually, to stay warm, have the densest feathers of any bird. It's about 80 feathers per square inch. And, you think, oh, that's great, it keeps them warm. But imagine if you have on a down coat and you're running around a track for about 30 minutes. Well, that's how they feel kind of when they jump out of water swimming. So, you finish after your big run and you're kind of going like this. Well, they're doing the same. So they don't have very many feathers along the underside of their flipper. So usually when they come out of the water, they'll actually walk around somewhat like this, essentially cooling off and letting the heat escape. And just like when it's cold, you and I kind of go like this, well, then it's the more traditional penguin stance, because that's where they lose their heat. So that's why they're going to protect. So there's that guy. He just hopped out of the water, and he's cooling off. Now, the final penguin fact is about penguin poop. And so you might be able to see a little bit of penguin poop back here. And it's about the penguin poop colors. So penguin poop comes in 3 varieties: pink, white, and green. And the cool thing, I guess, is that it's indicative of what they have been eating. Okay, so I'm going to give you, this is where you guys have to think a little bit. I'm going to give you guys about 15 seconds to think about what could it be, what does pink mean they were eating, what does white mean, and what does green mean. So take a few seconds, talk to your buddy next to you, see if you agree with them. Think about it, pink, white, and green. Yeah. I'm going to call on all ages, so, the young and the old, the front and the back. Okay, we'll start with pink. So we'll start with pink. Let's see. Do you definitely know? Because you know, you're guessing. Okay.
Shrimp.
Shrimp. So pink is shrimp. Any second to shrimp? Krill. Yes, very close. I'll give you 70% for shrimp and full credit for krill. So yes, pink is the krill, and that's actually their favorite thing to eat. If it's there, they'll eat krill. It's the most abundant, takes the least energy to break down, so they're happy if they get krill. Now, white. Any ideas for white? Let's see from the back. Let's see. Shaking some heads, some guesses. Come on, I went and talked to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, and they were all going crazy.
I'm guessing birds.
Birds for white? Okay, there's one. Who else? Kevin, you had a guess for white?
We're going to say fish. Yeah.
You said fish, yes? Fish is actually correct. So if it's white poop, it's very likely that they were eating fish. Now for the green. Any ideas on the green? Algae is one option. Any other? Yeah, I think you. Yes.
He said asparagus.
Asparagus. Yeah.
Asparagus.
I have bad news for you. There's no asparagus in Antarctica, and as part of my environmental permit, I agreed not to feed the animals. So, so interestingly enough, and it's kind of a trick question. First, when they're young and they go kind of from from baby. So you'll see here they have a lot of fluff on them, and mom or dad doesn't have any fluff on them or their baby down. So when they kind of transition to their normal feathers, there's a period where mom and dad aren't feeding them and they don't have the proper feathers to go swimming. And also each year they do molt and they get a new set of feathers, and the molting can take anywhere between 1 and 3 weeks. And again, while they're molting, they're not able to go swimming. So believe it or not, when I was at the elementary school the other day and the kids go, well, they have diarrhea or they're sick. And that's not too far from the truth. I told them they did better than the adults. And it's not too far from the truth. I mean, they're there, they can't eat, so it's essentially their stomach juices that are getting pooped out. And so when you see green, you've got a penguin nearby who's molting or going into his adult stage. And so those are our cool penguin facts for the evening. So, great. So I'd just like to close with one more thing, and then I'll open it up to questions. So this is just an awesome photo because we've got the king penguins there and an ocean tramp in the background. If you found this interesting at all, we like to share what we're doing because we think what we're doing is really cool. So depending what is your social media of choice, we've got all options. We also do a newsletter, so we got a website, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Please follow us. And the exciting news is that we've got stuff on the agenda coming up, and we're trying to do a range of things. So, you know, in February, we've got one couple coming down with their nieces because they're former geologists and they want to explore the inner geology self in the fjords, kind of in the footsteps of Darwin. And then we also have like a really cool trip coming up where we're literally going from Ushuaia through the canals up to Punta Arenas, across the Magellan Straits over to the Falkland Islands, or Malvinas, depending on who you talk to, and then from the Malvinas to Mar del Plata, and then up. And then on that trip, we actually have a scientist taking one of the berths. It's a young woman from Australia, just finished her master's. She'll be doing water quality sampling, and there's 3 berths left, so tell your friends that they too can get involved in some of the cool science and adventures at the end of the world.
And when does that happen?
That is this spring, so that is mid-March all the way up to, if cold does not appeal to your inner being, if Garrett County has given you enough of that, well, we'll be in Brazil in June, July, August, and it's warm there. So visit us, all info is on our websites. So with that, I'm open to questions, and hopefully you have a few. Pete, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to add to your penguin poop. You should tell them that they horizontally projectile poop.
Yeah, so if you go back to days of, you know, you have a grandchild that projectile vomits, well, yeah, they kind of projectile poop. So you need to be very careful where you're walking sometimes because it can go a significant distance. Yes?
I have several questions from the boat builder over here. I'm an architect and a small boat builder, and I was curious about that steel hull. Did you do all the welding? And
No.
So he was curious. He also has an interest. He's an architect and does small boat building. Was curious about if Fede did all of the welding.
Yeah, I have people who know how to weld and work with the steel. My job was to keep these people working because the guy knows very well the job but doesn't like to work. So
did you draw the plans for the
no,
boat?
it's based on Bruce Roberts' design.
Yeah. So it's actually quite
Australian.
so American or Australian? He's American.
American.
So it's quite interesting. He bought these plans. He took the plans, kind of changed everything. So the hull itself is kind of the same, but the keel is modified. The pilot house is raised and modified, and the interior layout is completely different from the plans. Everything is very much Fede's brainchild, except for kind of the main plans of the hull shape itself. Yeah.
That would be good if you would build it so you could get to things, because in my boat, the American boat builders build around everything and you can't get to anything.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's not just American boat builders. I think boat builders, the boat builders are obviously not the boat fixers. So they tend to not make things particularly accessible. Yes?
Did you do any reinforcing of the bow to get through the ice? Or
No, it's
the whole by itself
it's 3/16 of an inch, 4 millimeters.
Okay.
So it's pretty strong, and we were going slow.
No doubt in the whole time that it was.
Now there is a collision bulkhead, so if the bow gets a hole or something, there is a collision bulkhead further back. so isolates the
So
bow.
you had total confianza in everything.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, to be honest, we're fairly risk averse in what we do. Coming also from kind of professionally working offshore, we actually have we do extensive risk evaluation, and we're pretty cautious. In the movie, you see us breaking through that ice, but I'll be honest, that was really snow on top of the water. So it makes for a pretty awesome shot, but we're really not breaking through ice there. And as we were navigating the ice, we were literally going max 1 knot. I mean, we're just inching around. So even if you did hit something, I like to give an example of, your car. If you're going 30 miles an hour into your garage door and then into the back of your garage, there's going to be some serious damage. But if you're pulling out of your garage and you accidentally go forward instead of reverse, you just nudge it and maybe you nick your, fender there. So it's the same idea. If you're going slowly and you do nudge something, the damage will be minimal. Yeah. So, and also, if there was ice, we would go somewhere else, or we'd wait, So, I'll get to you in a second, I'll go to you first. Yeah.
Betty, if you're looking for a brand new species of spider that's never been seen before, what precautions are you taking, whether you know you wouldn't know if that spider is a poisonous spider or not, and
Well,
what do they tell you to do?
I asked that question to the people looking for the spiders. I wasn't myself looking for the spiders. And they said that in the area, because it's cold, they are not, say, poison spiders. They are all safe. All of them have some venom, but it's very little and doesn't do anything to you. Because it's very scary to see them just sticking everywhere, and I wouldn't do that anyway. So even if I know the spiders are safe. Yeah.
When they said no, they're not poisonous, did you go, yeah, uh-huh?
Yeah. Okay, I was afraid that they'll let go the spiders inside the boat, because they collect like a few hundreds.
Oh, really? That many?
Yeah. Of a lot of different.
Did you count them when they went off?
I should have. I think they forgot.
Yeah, the question was if we counted the spiders coming on and coming off, and we probably should have. Yes.
How do you set those 4 lines when you go to anchor? You take the dinghy out there and set them and anchor them in the ice, or?
Yeah, so we've actually kind of developed, there's a few, people have their own systems of what they do. Some people don't have the reels, some people take the bags. We've kind of developed our own system where we take lifting strops. So we take kind of these thick pieces of fabric that can hold 6-7 tons. And before the boat gets into kind of a confined space, we'll launch our dinghy. We'll take the dinghy to shore with 2 people, and then 2 will stay on the boat. So those 2 people will find the spots that are good, because to be honest, sometimes that can take an hour. There's not just perfect rocks sitting there. Sometimes there's a lot of imperfect rocks. So we'll send 2 people to shore. They'll put these initial strops around the rocks, and then once those are in place, then we'll send, because once the boat's in a confined, it's never a perfect day. There's always wind from the wrong direction, or seas from the wrong direction. So once you get into that confined space of where you kind of want to be, there's not very much maneuvering, so then things need to happen quickly. So we'll have found those and placed those. They'll come back with the dinghy. We'll start going in, pass them the lines, so then we can just secure quite quickly as well as drop the anchor. But other people do it differently. Some people actually put chains around the rocks because you don't want chafing on your rope. We found the strops, they don't chafe, and they're much easier to handle than chain.
Right.
So that's kind of our own system. I think we're really the only ones who do that system, but it works. Pete, yeah?
The maps that you showed where you were going, in many of them, on the upper left-hand corner, there is these series of stripes on the land. What is that?
Google Earth image. I don't have it. It's just from Google Earth. If you zoom in on Anvers Island, that's kind of what you get. So I don't know the details of why it's like that.
Yeah, it looks like about 10 or 12.
Yeah, no, it does. I don't know why it's like that. I don't know if it's the imagery or if it's meant to be like that. I'm not sure. But if you zoom in, that's what it comes up on Google Earth. Yeah. Yep. Kevin, and then you too. Yeah.
Why the swim?
Why not? Why not?
I can tell you why
So
not.
I will say the first, you kind of saw us swimming twice, and the first one was very warm. So believe it or not, if you just dig that much right next, there's geothermally heated water right there. So after our 4 or 5 days crossing, that was incredibly refreshing. The second
that one
swim,
I got.
yeah, the second swim, well, I'll be honest, I didn't jump in. There's two motivating factors. One is, why not? And the other is, we on board Quixote at that point had no water maker, but we have very large water tanks, and we're quite efficient in how we use water. And taking long showers is not one way to efficiently use water. So there was kind of two motivating factors in that jump in the water there.
I'd rather stink.
That's what I chose as well. I chose stinking over the.
The water wasn't cold nor hot. Was at 0 degrees centigrade.
32 degrees. The water is basically at 0 degrees down in Antarctica. Yeah. So as Fede said, it's not hot, it's not cold. Yeah. You had a question?
I had more of an observation because it really brought it back. But maybe not everybody's noticed, but when you're in Antarctica, there is nothing green.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Only the
no
penguin
green,
poop.
no brown.
Yeah.
White
Yes.
and blue.
Black
And grey
Yes.
and pink from penguin poop. But there's nothing green, and you don't realize it until you
You
come
come
back.
back. Yeah.
And you can smell the land. You read it in books, they smelled the land, and you always thought, well, that's rubbish. And you really do. It's
Yeah.
really
Yeah,
amazing.
smelling the trees and stuff. It's, it's quite
Uh-huh.
interesting. And another interesting thing as well that I'd like to mention, because actually the elementary students did quite well on these questions, is before you get to Antarctica, there's one of the issues as well with the environmental protection is invasive species. And of course, no one's just going to grab and bring invasive species, but it's the things we don't realize. So, we're all hiking around here, Swallow Falls, whatever. You get burrs on your socks, you get seeds.